Hi, this is Nancy with On Point TV and Quilting with Nancy. Thank you for joining me as we continue our series, Great Lakes Voyage, which is also known as the Learning to Quilt 2. So my original book was Learning to Quilt, taking you through many of the basic steps, and you can find that on our website, onpoint-TV. There's a couple of other books and patterns on there too, but this is our very latest, and this is Learning to Quilt 2, Great Lakes Voyage. So with this, we have gone through all of the different steps. You see behind me, this is what I call the dark colorway. The one on the table is the light colorway. And on our last session, we made the LeMoyne Star blocks. So now that our LeMoyne Star blocks are made, we need to set them on point. Now, what does on point mean? When a block is set, a straight set, it's just straight, just like this, with rows that go straight across. An on-point block is tipped like a diamond, so it is on its points. And that's what I've done with the LeMoyne Stars. Well, to put something on point, you have to also add setting triangles and corner triangles. And so that's what we have here. With this quilt and the one behind me, you see that I've got two colorways. So I'm using one colorway for one side of the triangles and then a second colorway, and you can decide what you want those to be. And then here on the end of it is corner triangles. So the large triangles, there is math involved, and that's all in the book, figuring out what size to cut them, and then the corner triangles here. So we're going to come back and I'm going to take you through step by step making setting triangles and corner triangles for your LeMoyne Star border. So before I take you through the cutting and the sewing of the LeMoyne Stars, it's actually for this quilt, I want to give you a little extra bonus lesson on setting triangles. So with the setting triangle, it makes it very interesting if you will use directional fabrics. Now, the one that I'm working on doesn't have directional fabrics, but I want to point it out to you because you will find directional fabrics to be probably one of the most creative uses of fabric in your quilts. And I've taken you through in many of my other quilt series on doing the setting triangles and corner triangles and the math involved. But I really want to point out again how impressive one works on a quilt. And here is the theory. When you're using a directional print like this super cool stripe here, and you use it in a setting triangle, you might think that that means that things are going to be tipped all over in different directions, and it's not so. When you have your square, and this is cut 12.5 inches, because that is the size we need for the quilt I'm working on, and if you will cut it on the diagonal twice, so that each square will yield 4 triangles. Okay. So you decide how many you need for the quilt that your quilt that you're making. And the idea with these stripes is that this one, this one will be for the top of the quilt. So your entire stack, like let's say you have 5 or 6 of them, you will have 5 or 6 of these that will go on the top of the quilt. And you see how directionally that's working? Then this one will go on the right hand side of your quilt, keeping those stripes going in the same direction. These will be on the left hand side of your quilt, and these at the bottom. So if you can imagine what that will do for your quilt, it will give it so much interest having these directional lines going in the right direction throughout your quilt. All of your quilting friends will be marveled and amazed. Then they'll think that you fussy cut them out. And go ahead, tell them you did. Tell them how it was really hard. But in truth, it was so easy. The same thing is true with the corner triangles. So here I have, these are 6.5, which is needed for the quilt. With the corner triangles, you want to cut them in different, so instead of stacking them up on top of another and cutting in one direction, you want to cut them individually, one in one direction and the second one in the opposite direction. So that this one will go in the top right hand corner. Let's find my top one again. There it is. You see how that lines up with the top setting triangle. Then this one goes in the top left-hand corner, keeping all those going directionally. Then this is my side. Everything's in the right direction. Here's my other side. Now sliding this up, oops. This corner triangle will jump all the way over here to the right-hand side. This one going to the left-hand side. And this is, oops, this one goes down here. There we go. So do you see what that directional fabric will do for your quilt, having those all run directionally? So jump back to some of my other series and you'll see some of the quilts that I've made where this is really, really powerful. And it can be very powerful in the Great Lakes Journey quilt or Great Lakes Voyage quilt. So consider using a directional print for this next step. Okay. So for this quilt, we have our LeMoyne Stars, and the LeMoyne Stars create an on-point border for the quilt. And this is what it's going to look like. Now this is not really directional fabrics. I wasn't able to really wow you with that working on there. Okay. So with this, we need 12.5-inch large squares, which are right here, and 6.5-inch small. So here's the other one for my setting triangles. So that one's a 12.5. So let's cut that on the diagonal twice. And I normally do cut all of them at once. I can't remember how many I needed for this quilt. I'm thinking maybe 6. And I cut all 6 at once. Okay. So I have my light setting triangles. And I have my dark setting triangles. And I got my corners in there somewhere too. There's one. I can't find the, oh, there they are. They're under here. All right. So if you'll take your triangle, set it on point, and then there you go. You would have no idea that I spent hours preparing this, did you? As unorganized as I look, seriously, hours and hours prepping all this, and I still get lost and confused. All right, so here is my setting, my LeMoyne Star on point. Here is one of my corner triangles. Then I'm going to use my dark colorway of my setting triangle, and then a light colorway of another corner triangle. So this quilt, instead of just having 4 corner triangles, because that's normal on a quilt, you have 4. With this, you're going to have 4 corner triangles on each border going all the way around. So you can see in the picture now of the full quilt where you can see that those LeMoyne Star borders each have their 4 corner triangles going around. Okay? And then a light setting triangle. Then another LeMoyne Star. Then dark and light and so on. So this particular border I think has 5 of these, but I won't bore you with the layout of that because I think you get the idea, because this would go on the end one, you would have your dark corner and light corner. So that's going to frame this up. This also would be a very nice setting if you were making things like table runners. You could see like, done. My table runner is now finished. But we're going to put this on a quilt. So now for this, I'm going to piece it. And I'm going to take this section, going to piece it down onto this square. So I'll take and put 1 pin in there. And then this block is going to have a corner triangle on it. So I like to fold my corner triangle, kind of crease it right there in the middle, and then match it up with the middle of the block and pin that. And I'm going to pin these all. So here's my next one. And this is the kind of thing when you're doing things like this that you have to be very methodical. So lay it all out on your ironing board, pin things in place, and then go into your sewing machine. Because for you to get one of these tipped around like this is a very common error. Ask me how I know. So be very methodical, taking things to your ironing board or your big table, and then get things pinned before you go to your sewing machine. So I'm going to get one more here. And then I'm going to sew these off camera. I don't think you need to see me sew these. as I'm doing this, but then I'm going to bring them back and show you the next step, because putting those blocks together is one of those things that people get confused with. So I've sewed on those setting triangles. So this is what an individual unit looks like when you're done, whereas this triangle's off here and this triangle's off here. And it's not a straight row, it's not a rectangular row. So anytime you're dealing with setting triangles, you always want to be sure that you go back to your design table, that you lay everything back out, and that you're sure that you've put these triangles the way that they need to be. Trust me, everybody I know that has ever tried putting something on point accidentally took one of these and turned it the other way, and they're like, oh, I just thought I knew what I was doing, and I obviously didn't. When you're putting these together, you're going to match them up at the setting triangles. So this seam, they're all pressed toward the setting triangles, so you don't have a bulky seam. So this center seam right here is what you're going to match up when you're sewing them together. And that can get confusing because you'll kind of sort of want to put the blocks together, but just remember that they don't. It's the setting triangles that go together, and then you will add your corners to all of them. Now, after you get your setting triangles on, I always, in my patterns, I'm always making the setting triangles and corner triangles a little bit bigger than they actually need to be so that you can trim them up when you're done. So that's what I'm going to do now. So on this one, you can kind of see where this is sticking, up from that point by more than 1/2 of an inch, and yet here it's only 1/4 of an inch, and it will vary throughout. So I will always trim them, and when I do that, I trim it 2 points at a time. I do not try to go all the way across the quilt at once, trimming them. I will start here, and I'm lining up my ruler. So on my ruler, from the edge to that 1/4 inch is where that green point is. Then I'm going to my second one, lining up the 1/4 of an inch to where that green point is. Scooch that down a little bit, and then trim. Stopping at the second point. Now you can slide it down. Put your rotary cutter back there where it was, then slide your ruler up. So the next one is at the 1/4 inch point, stopping there. And if you do this at home on your large cutting surface, you can just kind of move your ruler as you go, but always stopping the rotary cutter at that point, then moving the ruler to where the next one needs to be, and going to the next one and the next one, going all around so that in the end you will have 1/4 inch points all the way around. Now sometimes it might seem like one is dipped in farther than another. Don't worry about it. I still do that one at a time, because when these are sewn into the quilt itself will move them into position to where they need to be. So that makes our LeMoyne Stars on its setting triangle borders complete, which means the last step to this quilt for the piecing parts of it is to make our New York Beauty cornerstones. So next time when we come together, we'll be making a New York Beauty, and it's going to be paper piecing and curved piecing, something else you should not be afraid to do. If you like these episodes, please share them with your quilty friends and all get together. Maybe have one of those watch parties I heard about. I don't know. Some people do those things. So thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.